Welcome to the latest episode of the Connected Carcast. It's brought to you by Carvoyant. Make sure you check out what they're doing to put control back in the hands of drivers and developers at carvoyant.com. Our guest today is Eric Cook. You know him as Eric the Car Guy. He's one of the top voices in the auto repair industry, and to say that we're more than a little excited to have him join the show is an understatement. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good. Well, enough of my rambling. Let's get this thing rolling. So, Eric, I read through your bio, which if anyone watching hasn't done yet, I encourage you to do so as soon as this conversation is over. You can find Eric at ericthecarguy.com. But your bio got me thinking. So, you've seen a lot of changes in the industry over the course of your career. So I want to kick off this episode with your thoughts on how the market has changed since you first started out at Bob Matthews Import and Domestic Auto Repair.
Well, good point. It has changed dramatically in my career. I don't really feel like I've been in it that long, not as long as some, but the changes have been dramatic, as you pointed out. When I first started working, one of the first vehicles I worked on still had a carburetor on it. So even emission systems hadn't fully taken over yet. But since then, as you pointed out, things have gone from, mechanical carburation, things of that type, to something that's basically an iPod on wheels. So, and moving even more in that direction. So yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of that. And also working on a luxury car line for a while, I got to see some of the bleeding edge of that type of technology being implemented in those vehicles, because they seem to start out in the higher end vehicles before they trickle down into our, regular everyday vehicles that us mortals drive. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely something I've seen.
Do you think it's starting to become a quicker trickle down?
Yeah, I think it's sort of, what is that, Moore's Law or whatever it is, that states that things increase at an exponential rate after they cross a certain threshold. And I think that's definitely true in the automotive world, because now with things being as connected as they are, and it's almost like cradle to grave, the way they design cars on a computer system and the way they integrate those computer systems to try and monitor those systems throughout the lifetime of that vehicle, at least from an auto repair perspective, that yeah, there is a much quicker implementation, and I think that's by design, and I think that will continue well into the future.
How about from your customer base, those first few that came in with a Mercedes connected, were they even using it? Were they talking about it? And do you hear more at this point?
I think there will need to be, it depends on the individual, because some people buy those things just for the sake of buying those things. Maybe it's something that they're used to. As I said, I worked for a luxury car line for a while. So there was some growing pains, even getting people to pair their cell phones up with their hands-free systems. That was something that was a challenge for a while when those systems first came out. I think it's less so now, because I think this quote-unquote generation coming up and are purchasing newer vehicles now and are getting to that point where they're maybe a little more affluent and can purchase those vehicles. Or, as I stated before, those technologies that were in high-end vehicles are now trickling down into regular quote-unquote everyday vehicles. I think there's less of an issue with it now, because also I think the manufacturers have moved towards that as well, because they want to make their vehicles probably as easy to use as possible. So I think they go through great pains to try and make their instructions easy to follow. But I mean, an owner's manual from 1979 was probably about this thick. Now it's like a phone book. If it's even there at all, it might even be found online for all I know these days.
Telematics are the new air conditioning and power windows.
Yes, precisely. That's precisely it. I mean, it started out with those simple luxuries with power steering and things, and I think back in the day, that was really a move towards getting the female market to purchase vehicles. But now it's a much more connected world, and I think that the auto manufacturers have really embraced that and are making vehicles to cater to that environment.
Talking about telematics, you talked about telematics and the future of auto repair about a year and a half ago. So you were pretty early on this. Any updated thoughts and observations, since that airing? And folks, you can check that out on Eric's YouTube channel as well.
That one's on ETCG1, by the way.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's changed dramatically in the past year. It is something that has become more embraced, and some of the things that I mentioned in there, especially as far as the connectivity, where you'd say instead of billboards, you have different businesses perhaps reaching out to your satellite navigation system or the display system in your vehicle as you're driving by. possibly inviting you to their facility either through a coupon or something like that, and says, hey, stop by and just push this button and we'll set your navigation to our doorstep. I think that world is fastly approaching, honestly, because I think in some ways people want to embrace it, but then in other ways I'm sure there'll be some growing pains involved with that as well.
Renz, I know that's something that you've talked about in the past with repair and people driving on by and being able to get offers, sort of the consumer side of that. What about on the data and the privacy side?
You know, what's interesting with that is there's a movement afoot where consumers are becoming aware of their data and the fact that historically companies would just kind of abuse that access and sell that outright to gain more leads and more revenue, and the consumer just gets bombarded by ill-timed offers. And at the cornerstone of this thought is the vendor or the consumer owns that data, and the concept is vendor relationship management, where now the consumer says, hey, vendor, here's what I need, and this is the timing of when I need it. And we think the connected car could be a big piece of that, particularly as it pertains to auto repair or, like you were just talking about, contextual advertising, where it's based on where that driver is and knowing some of their pertinent needs. But specifically to auto repair, hey, check engine light is on. Telematics gives the ability to know to a certain extent what that need is, and particularly routine maintenance, and then share that with the marketplace. I think the time is ripe for that to be implemented, and the consumer can say, hey, shops, this is what I'm looking for. And now a technician doesn't have to just do a blind mailing. They can wait for those incoming pings to come and respond to them.
Yeah, that's true. I do see that there's a lot of potential for that as far as repair is concerned. In fact, with that type of connectivity, you may not even have to travel to the repair facility to get your car scanned. You know, now you plug something in and pull a code. And I think the move is towards manufacturers. I haven't heard anything specific about this, but I've heard rumors of it, to where the next phase of OBD, right now it's OBD2, but OBD3 may be something that there is no mechanical interface. It's something that could be wireless, to where you just need to be near an internet connection, and you could be miles away and still sort of get a read on what's happening with those systems and why that light might be turned on. So in that sense, it would be something very beneficial, like to somebody who's, say, stranded in a situation with systems like OnStar, that type of thing.
I mean, we can do it with the Mars rover. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to send a little bit of code to a broken Chevy someplace on the road, right?
Well, I mean, there's going to be no replacement for the technician at the end of the day, because there's still a fair amount of experience that comes in. Mm-hmm. But the engineering of modern vehicles is as such to where it's very heavy in the electronics, and those electronics are all monitored by the systems on that vehicle. And it's really not much of a leap to give that vehicle an IP address and be able to get into it just like you would as if you plugged into it when it was sitting right in front of you. So, I mean, that potential is there. But you brought up an interesting point earlier, Renz, in that there is some privacy issues that have come about, and that I think are a real concern. And it's not just from a consumer aspect, but if you also think about from a government standpoint, I mean, I'm sure they would be very interested to be able to track you. Or, for instance, if there was a high-speed chase involving your vehicle, the ability to shut down that vehicle on the highway before it does any damage. So there's a lot of, it's a Pandora's box, if you will.
Absolutely.
There's also a lot of potential for growth and for a better auto repair experience should you fall into that category.
Mm-hmm.
What about for the for the mechanics and those guys in the shops? How has this changed what they do and what they study and how they prepare for the future?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think a lot of people are asking themselves that very thing, particularly the independent shops. The dealerships, well, they've got their finger on the pulse of what the manufacturer is doing, at least they should. I believe there's a lot of communication that goes on between the manufacturer and the dealer, but not much for the aftermarket. And once vehicles pass that point in their life cycle where they're no longer within that dealership umbrella and they get out into the world, that's going to be something that, the everyday mechanic is going to face, not to mention the DIYer. I deal with a lot of people who work on their own vehicles, and I'm sure they have concerns about being able to get into that software that may or may not be proprietary in order to repair their own vehicles. So it's definitely something that is to be considered. As far as what happens in automotive education, I think that's really where the rubber meets the road, to create a pun there. But yeah, they're going to have to be educated about those systems. They're going to have to find ways to connect with those systems. And in many ways, I think the level of, for lack of a better word, respect the automotive technician receives should go up along with their pay in those situations, because you're really talking about somebody who's going from mechanical environment into a technological environment and marrying those two things together. That's a particular skill set that not a lot of people possess, even in the repair field. So, they're going to have to find a way to get people who are interested in doing this type of work and capable of doing this type of work to be in the industry to help service these vehicles once they reach that point in their service life.
And then their marketing mindset has to be on the digital outreach, is my belief, so that they're able to be a part of the conversation, the connected car. So the connected car isn't just something that points the automaker's metal back to a given dealership for the life cycle of that vehicle. And as a consumer, I want those choices. Now, yeah, it's under warranty, fine. I'll go back to the dealership because it's covered anyway. But once it's out, like you say, from under that umbrella, and I have the choice to go somewhere, I'd like to point that data stream away from the dealership potentially, maybe to someone I've gained some trust with locally.
Or maybe even yourself, as I said.
Yeah.
Yourself, or you might want to take a look at that information and see if you could pursue a repair on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Because let's face it, once vehicles reach this point where they're that this technologically involved, that there's going to have to be other specialized approaches to dealing with those issues, and they may be technological and they may not be mechanical in nature.
Whole new world of opening up for existing mechanics and potentially future mechanics.
Yeah, and it really depends, because as you mentioned about the dealers wanting to keep you within that realm at the dealership, that's true. And they've been trying that for some time. In fact, they tried to shut us out pretty much before OBD2. In the world before OBD2, it was the Wild West as far as connectivity and as far as getting any kind of repair information out of a vehicle. And even for a long time, it was trying to gain access to the systems like ABS systems or SRS systems, or now TPMS systems, all those systems that work in concert with just the engine management system. So they do put up barriers because it's proprietary technology, and in some ways they should be best equipped to service that vehicle since they designed and engineered it, through logic. But in reality, not everybody can afford that service, because let's face it, the dealership experience can be an expensive experience, and not everybody can afford that. Yet they still need to get back and forth to work. So I think you'll either see one of two things. I think you'll see, one camp that's embracing the technology and moving on and finds a way around it, and another camp that may hold on to older vehicles that don't have the technology so that they don't have to deal with it.
And Renz, I know that's one of the huge markets for Carvoyant are the existing vehicles, the aftermarket and used vehicles that are on the road today. What do we put that at? Something like 200 or 250 million cars?
Yeah, exactly. In that range that are OBD2 compliant, just in the U.S. alone, where, hey, let's put those vehicles on the grid so that we start building that infrastructure in for the auto repair space to reach out into the connected car.
Great. Well, this is a great conversation. I appreciate it. I like to keep these somewhat short and to the point. Any other last thoughts, Eric or Renz?
You first, Renz.
I look forward to reaching out and getting these independent repair guys on the grid with the connected car, and it's a matter of finding the right structure that the technology can be most affordable for the repair world to embrace this in the same way that an OnStar pipe is piping that data back to the dealer. I'd like to see that same relationship happen in the auto repair space.
Yeah, that would certainly be an interesting thought, and I think you'll find some repair shops would be willing to embrace it, and other ones might not. Because I also did a video not long ago about you tend to specialize, and I think that's the way. I think it's a profitable way to go about a repair facility, in that you're dealing with vehicles that you're familiar with, systems that you're familiar with, and that you can be profitable. If you're spending half of your day trying to learn a system just so that you can diagnose it, that eats into your time and eats into your bottom line. So it would have to be I don't want to say an out of the box solution, but certainly something has to be, some solution has to incorporate that thought, so that, of course, the automotive technician is constantly needing to be trained and learn new things. But if the bar has moved so far ahead, I think the tendency might be to just shy away from it altogether. And as I said, specialize in other systems like maybe brakes or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see where it ends up. And I think the public and the repair industry will both have a hand in it to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to end it. Thank you very much, Eric. Remember, everyone, check out Eric Cook at ericthecarguy.com. And Renz, thank you very much. That's at carvoyant.com. We'll post this up pretty quickly, and anybody wants to comment, jump on in. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike.